Many people participated in the Rocky Hill School Oral History Project, A Sense of Time, A Sense of Place. A few of the upper school students interviewed teachers, advisors, and family. At the conclusion of that, we turned the camera onto them to ask a few questions. We'd like to share their answers to one of the questions with you now.
We often ended the interviews with the alums to ask them to look back on their experience and say just one or two words about the most important thing that they think that Rocky Hill gave them, or to describe the school in a couple of words. So I'm going to ask you all to do that because you are also about to be able to look back on this experience.
It was small. I mean, I know that's kind of an obvious thing to say, but I feel like it just kind of encompasses everything that's good about Rocky Hill. And like, I feel like if they tried to make it bigger, it would lose a lot of what makes it different.
The team is definitely like a model for the school, and it's what she was saying was absolutely true. How like we're all so comfortable with each other because it's such a small team, and we're all so comfortable with each other in the school because it's such a small school.
I guess I just have to say we're amazingly efficient with our size. Like, as they said, I mean, sports teams wise, we are a very small school, but we do a lot with it. It's amazing what we do with such a tiny place and how we make everything work so well.
We're just like such a big family. Like, it's kind of dysfunctional, but it's like we're still such a big family, and like I can't imagine like not seeing these guys every day. It's just gonna be so weird.
Along that like size and family thing, I mean, one thing that I really like about Rocky Hill, I think it's the word variety. The fact that you are able to like see and so many different things.
I mean, I haven't even been here that long, but I definitely think the relationships you make here you're going to take forever.
I mean, to go along with that is, it was close. Everything is just so close about Rocky Hill. Like, walk down the halls and know the name of everyone, and it just allows you to be comfortable with who you are and just be yourself around everyone.
I think kind of following along with that, for me, Rocky Hill's really given me an opportunity to grow like into my own person.
Like, I can't wait to, go out in the world, succeed, and then come back and say, you helped me do this, and like see how they're doing, and start another conversation with them and have fun with them again.
I think that even this interview has made us all appreciate Rocky Hill.
Yeah.
More like reminiscing, like wow, like it actually has been an amazing experience.
The 75th Oral History Project emanated from our desire to have a collection of stories through our history, as viewed through the lens of people who participated and for our archives. Many people from several constituencies have had a role in the life of Rocky Hill School through the years, and it's the clarity of some of their voices that we wanted to capture. You will see that while there has been change and significant growth from the conceptual stages of our school to present day, there are traditions and aspects of our culture that have remained the same, preserving the past and building a strong future. Many people, including our students, have participated in collecting and collating material for our permanent archives. The entire project reflects a broad community effort and helps to create the bigger picture from individual stories, one that will give the archival reader and the video viewer a sense of time and a sense of place as they take a journey through our history.
I think it's quite fitting that the humble roots of Rocky Hill School began with a child, family, and teacher relationship, specifically that of the Eldridge family, and a teacher from the Gordon School. Her name was Dorothy Knott Marshall. When Gordon School abandoned their satellite preschool after 1 year in the old Coesit Elementary School on Spencer Avenue, Mrs. Lucius Eldridge, whose 2 children attended the program, extended an invitation to Dorothy Marshall to continue the preschool at the family homestead, and it was on Division Street. The Eldridges supported the innovative and quite experiential approach to learning that was utilized by Mrs. Marshall.
Very proud of her. Because to be headmistress of a school, to found it and be headmistress is, you know, pretty special.
Yeah.
And especially in, you know, in those years, 1930s.
Several of the preschoolers from the home of Mrs. Gordon Belsey on Love Lane joined the group at the Eldridge Farm, and this brought the number of students to 10. In the beginning, the school was called Rocky Hill Day School, and that was after the area within East Greenwich, where the first schoolhouse was eventually built across the farmhouse by Mr. Gary House, Mrs. Eldridge's father.
Mr. House's grandchildren were in the school, in my mother's classes, and he liked what was going on, and so did his daughter, their mother, and so he was the benefactor. And so it all started from there, I guess, prior to that. And then when they got the big building, then we lived there. So sometimes in the school year, my bedroom was a classroom, and I would be moved along. It was a great building. It had a circular stairway and a huge hall, and I can remember, I would say Mr. Howland, because they had the adjoining property. He would ride up on his horse, and you can tell by the picture that the front door is huge, and the back side of the house was equally as huge. And he would come up and go in one door and go out the other on his horse. It was just, I mean, it's any wonder I remember it, you know.
When they hired Nathan and Lillian Hale after their return from Europe, they too lived there with their 2 young sons. And that occurred around 1940. I'm reminded of the Yeats quote, I think, that really helps put Nathan into perspective. He believed that learning was not about filling a bucket, but it really is about lighting a fire.
He and I one time had a great discussion. We sat on the stairs, and as I said, it was a circular stair. And we had done something outside, and he had picked some grass, and we sat on the stairs, and he was telling me how good the chlorophyll was from it. And that is a big memory from him. And also he took me roller skating, and I thought that was pretty neat, and he thought I did very well, I remember, you know, so those types of things is what I would remember.
Both he and Lillian loved building community, building family. Allowed him to take the helm only a year after he had arrived, when Mrs. Marshall had decided that she wanted to continue with teaching, and asked Nathan if he would like to purchase the school, which he did. For $5,000. He purchased it as a growing concern.
What's sometimes lost in the history of the school is how hard it was for the Hales to actually take a fledgling preschool program that Mrs. Marshall had founded and started and had done a wonderful job with. And for this young couple, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Hale, to become involved and then say, we want to really out of this create a school. And Mr. Hale, I think that Mr. Hale's vision came from his own dedication and commitment to knowing that experiential learning, had to be a part of the overall learning paradigm.
He invited me down, and then he said, well, I would like to have you start in September of '42. And so one day he came and said, I would like to have you take over the educational part of the school and come out of your 3rd grade, and I'll get another teacher for the 3rd grade. He said, you're going to be the principal and you're going to run the building, and I'm going out and knock on doors for money. He was my man.
Yes.
There's no question about that. We were on the same page.
Yes.
All the way. That was the big thing. We were on the same page. I believed in his discipline. I believed in everything that he taught. And he was so good at it. To me, he was just a top teacher. Maybe I became a little bit better by the way he loved me so much.
The classics were important to him, art was important, drama was important to him. His philosophy was that all of these things enriched our lives, and that we needed the interdisciplinary components to education to tie these all together and make them meaningful, and to give young people the life skills that would allow them to become great citizens.
I marvel at Mr. Hale because we learned things and everything was fun. It was great. He was so far advanced. I mean, he was way ahead of his time, really. The business of plays and operettas and all kinds of pageants, A Christmas Story, everything. We're always on stage, and that gave us a stage presence. Everybody was on stage. It stays with you when you learn at a young age. But I always liked going to school at Rocky Hill. There was always fun things going on.
He wanted to expand the camp.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it because we needed a waterfront. And he was a great sailor, and he wanted to have sailing.
This was his vision for the school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So he had a trustee, name was Kirtland Gibson.
Oh yeah.
That lived across the river. And Kirtland Gibson at a trustees meeting said, when Mr. Hale was saying, I want to expand the school. And he said, I know just the property. It's across the way from me. And it's Hopelands. See, if I tell you this will all come back to you because you moved over there with them.
But the first time we saw it,
I know.
He took me over to said, this is where our new school is going to be, and I never saw such a mess in my life. I just came home and said to my husband, my parents, this can't be. I mean, he cannot do this. It's impossible, the whole.
From the earliest board of directors, he and Nathan Hale were great friends, and he was either directly on the board or worked with him ever since the beginning. And in fact, it was he who told Nathan Hale about this property. He said, because when Nathan wanted to move off Division Street, Dad said, hey, you got to look into this something.
But Dad was the head of the board of trustees for most of my time when I was here at campus.
It was a day camp, day sitting. Then I think it went in hiatus for a while.
That's what I think
There was
too.
a few years, the school was here, and then the camp restarted. They built the retention pond there. That was a big deal. And so at high tide, they dropped the boards in and seal it off and trap all the horseshoe crabs in there. And then
talking about that yesterday.
Scared the hell out of a lot of kids, I'll tell you. The school had the sailboats. I don't know where Nathan got them, but he had
These are weasels.
7 or 8 weasels.
Yeah.
And then there was a Beetle, and there was a Lightning.
Mr. Hale sailed the Lightning.
Yeah.
And I was a swimming instructor
teaching sailing.
at age of 12.
Teaching sailing.
For camp. Yep. I first came over, and then they asked me to demonstrate different strokes. So I could do that, and then the next year, I think I got paid too. Not
much.
Like $5 a week or something.
Yeah.
But his vision for the school was that it was going to be a fabulously successful country day school. Pre-prep, go through the 8th or 9th grade. He was a firm believer in the boarding environment and the day environment. He loved having boarders from all over. There were kids from Maine, but there were kids from Europe, and there were really enjoyed that. And I think for his vision, it was a country day school that was dedicated to educating young people, building on their islands of competency, and he took risks on kids that perhaps today people would feel they don't need to take. And he was also the head of a very, very poor school at that time. So, for him, there were so many things he couldn't do that he really wanted to do.
Mr. Hale was a very sort of avant-garde teacher. I remember one time when he took us out, he said it's cold out, let's go out to the pond. So there was a pond out that way, and we could watch the turtle, a freshwater pond, and we could see turtles going underneath, and we had to make a hypothesis and develop some scientific understanding of that. And then we used to go, I was probably in like 4th or 5th grade, and we would come back and he would have a lot of questions in a bowl, and we'd pick out a question, and right then and there we'd have to stand and answer that. We were like Miss America. Have to stand and answer questions and do public speaking in front of the group, and then once we finished that we had to go back and write a paper about it. Yeah, the freedom we had, well, the influence that Mr. Hale had, I became a teacher, and I taught in a lot of ways that he did as well. So it wasn't just what came out of the book. And
not information as it was values. I still think Nathan Hale was one of the more profound influences on my life, and not that I can remember much about anything he taught me, other than the example he set and the freedom he gave us to do. And I'm sure he was always there bumping and nudging us back in the right direction.
My first contact with Rocky Hill was my bus driver. And of course, in 1954, Rocky Hill was very much a transportation school. And most of the buses, the quote-unquote buses that they used, were Navy surplus carryalls. And the carryall is kind of the Chevrolet 1950 version of a modern SUV. It was two-door, would hold about 10 to 12 people, I think, if I remember correctly, in 3 or 4 rows of seats. This blue thing shows up in front of my house the morning I started school. And the lady who was driving it was a lady named Mrs. Gendron, right? Mrs. Gendron was a very diminutive kind of person, very small person with a voice like a DI, like a drill sergeant, right? And she was so small that to drive this thing, they had to put wooden blocks on the pedals so she could reach them. And that was my introduction. All the adventures I've had, all the rest of it comes from the fact that when I got here, there was someone here who took enough of an interest in me to teach me how to read and teach me how to cope. And so none of the rest of it would have happened without that.
When the hurricane came along in '54 and blew a lot of that down, and the old building and the trees, and they were heartsick.
So after Hurricane Carol hit, Mr. and Mrs. Hale used the insurance money in part to fund the building of Perkins. So that building was actually constructed during your time at Rocky Hill, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And how did that change the school?
I think it changed the school because it made it seem more formalized, more up to date. Here we had brand new facilities. We weren't just in older facilities where we were kind of making do with something that hadn't been intended as a school. This was the first building that was designed and intended as a school building. And so I think it made learning seem like a more serious thing. And also by 8th grade, learning was becoming a more serious thing. I think he hired somewhat unconventional teachers sometimes, and I think that he was always wanting us to stretch. Rocky Hill built that first sense for me of how important it is to be part of the community in which you exist. Part of the community by being a good volunteer, by doing some of the work that you see that needs to be done, by asking for help and not being embarrassed about asking for help or asking questions, and learning to appreciate the special things in the place you are. Just because it's different from what you've known doesn't mean it's bad. It means you have an opportunity to learn some more and meet some new friends. And that happened for me beginning at Rocky Hill.
I wanted to touch a little bit on Bob Smith because he came in after Nathan, and it was clear that he was a classicist who really brought a lot of tradition to the school. He built on the traditions that Nathan had established, but he knew what the school needed in terms of everything from an alma mater to a crest, to a yearbook, to the kinds of things that really begin to shape
an independent school, no matter where you are.
In the spring of 1967, which was the first spring that I was there at the school, I hadn't even been there a full year, and it was the first graduation, the first 12th grade graduation. They asked me to be part of the planning for what the graduation ceremony was to look like. When you consider the size of the school and the resources that it lacked, you know, the constraints on that, it accomplished so much more than you would have imagined. For the students, the faculty were tremendously committed, dedicated to the mission of the school, to getting the most out of their students. And, you know, those early years, nobody was paid much. That we didn't have very many students, and yet we managed to turn out some incredible intellectual superstars and people who are movers and shakers in their community. And I think that it had a lasting effect on everybody who was there.
Building-wise, you know, basically where we're sitting, it was, you know, half of what was here at the beginning, and there was, I mean, there was no Hale, there was no Campbell Center, no gym, anything like that. So physically, the place has changed unbelievably. Plus, it's probably 2.5 times the size it was when I started. I mean, my class graduating was the first one that had 20 kids in it, and now you graduate 40 every year. So it's a much different feel with the kids coming in and out.
Sam and I were here as students. He has 2 younger siblings that were here at the same time. I have a younger brother who was here at the same time. And you thought nothing of walking by lower school and like scooping up your little brother or sister and kind of bopping around with them. And so it was seriously family. There was no segregation even between the divisions. And when we had assemblies, because we were small enough, we'd have our assemblies in the library, which is a carriage house. We could all be there together, you know, kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade, and had plenty of room, and everybody did something. And it was just a really nice coming together. And again, you know the lower school, because as a high school student, you go down and you help and you volunteer. And we would help with field day every year with Mrs. Young. And I was given the task of doing the high jump and putting that bar back up and every time. So when I came back as a teacher, that was my first assignment. You will be doing that because you know how to do it right. I'm like, okay, Mrs. Young. I felt just like I was still in high school too. Okay. You asked me to, I will do it.
That feeling that you were raised by a big family, and you know, you carry that with you when you leave here. And I mean, I went to Tennessee to go to college, so I went away, and but this place never really leaves you, even when you do go away.
We were thrilled to have Hugh, because Hugh came in with great esprit, and of course Sound and Music was then very popular, and having Lorley, you know, there, and all those girls, all these little, just like the Trapp Family Lodge, you know, Trapp Family, they had 7 girls.
Oh my goodness.
And it brought a huge, a lot of energy and fun.
Outdoor education was another thing that I believe very strongly in. I was very much of an experiential education. I mean, along with you had to have the book learning, you had to have the intellectual exercises of the mind, and develop those brain muscles, as it were, but they were also reinforced by experiencing things, whether it was problem solving with a group in a ropes course, or whether it was helping a classmate with a real life problem, or whether it was using your knowledge of foreign language to communicate with an audience in a play environment, or experiencing what the Romans must have felt like in a banquet. All of those threads of experiential education. I started off taking classes up to Chewonki in Maine, and we did sea kayaking, and we would camp on these islands in the bay there off the coast. It was an amazing experience.
The years when they built the big gym, Hank was very, very involved in all, and getting stronger board members.
Well, Henry may probably not remember walking up my driveway, but he did. And so that happened, and 6 months into being chairman of the board, Hugh Campbell announced that he was going to retire and go up to Vermont with where the Von Trapps lived, and so that was a rude awakening to what being head of a board is all about. The particular area had a close affiliation with the school, and a lot of kids, you know, children or grandchildren had gone to Rocky Hill. And it was coming out of the days of Nathan Hale into being recognized as a growing school, better school. So they were all great years. I mean, from the years that Alan took over and I was still involved, every year we saw an enrollment increase. And that helps the budget tremendously, as you might imagine. And we did not have the campus you have today. I mean, what's happened here in the last 20 years or 25 years is fantastic.
Al Flynn was a big influence on my thinking about the school and what the future of the school was. He was very careful I mean, I really saw him as a almost a custodian of the school's integrity, and both from a fiscal standpoint and from a just tradition, the respect, academic respect for the school, understanding what the school needed and what it was able to afford at the moment. And then, you know, he had a very strong sense of guardianship for the school. So in that sense, he was a big influence. I had a huge amount of respect working with him. I think he understood, maybe for the first time, that the upper school was never going to really succeed and grow unless we had a vibrant sports program. The athletic teams were crucial to attracting and keeping the kind of students that we wanted. The all-around, bright, athletic, the arts, all, you know, the Renaissance student, as it were.
We had a great view, and we had a wonderful setting for our children to grow up in and for our school to grow in. But I cannot imagine a more ideal spot for young people to engage in the academic pursuits and at the same time enjoy the natural setting. It just, I've never seen anything like it in any of the schools that I've been a part of. They are nice, but they're not like Rocky Hill.
In some ways, the changes have been profound. When I first came here in 1976, we had 75 students in the upper school. Faculty ate here. The kitchen was there. Kids ate all through this area here. This, where Mrs. Washburn's office is, was an area where kids ate. The kitchen, you got your lunch where the receptionist's place is now. A lot of that stuff happened here. There was no Campbell Center. There was no Hale. The headmaster's home had just been built. That was built in '75 when Alan Flynn first came here. And so over the years, the physical plant has changed a lot. We built Campbell in 1980. We actually had a dining hall and a place where we could do plays. I mean, believe me, you know, there are those that say now that Campbell is inadequate in lots of ways. We thought it was pretty cool then.
Campbell was built. That was just finishing up when I was starting. But it was still, the Geyersbachs were living in a house next to the brick house. We still had English class with Mr. Geyersbach in the brick house. I think that was a fun thing of Rock Hill because we went from building to building. And that, I think, is wonderful for the fresh air concept, that we were really not just sitting in a classroom, you know, all day. We were out and about and moving around, and I think that's very healthy. Know thyself, which is a school motto. And the Know Thyself theme runs deep within the roots of the school's mission, not only because of the class ratios and the teachers and the students, and it's such a close proximity. You really can grow to be your own individual, and who you are is supported. And once you leave here, you have such a foundation of knowing thyself that you really can be everything that you can be when you leave. You have that grounding, you have that support system.
He was there for every home game, and you could tell, you could always count on Mr. Flynn over there with his tweed jacket and tight haircut and former Marine haircut, and it'd be the last seconds of the game and someone would hit a shot and we cut the lead by 35 points or whatever it was, and he'd still be cheering us on. Yeah. And that, to me, that had a huge impression of somebody who was just there all the time for you, no matter what. Rocky Hill helped you open their arms to encourage you to get involved, whether it be in sports or off the field. And that helps, I think, down the road. I think you really become, whether it's in your community or your work, take ownership in it, and it'll have a lot of long-lasting memories.
What I'm impressed about Rocky Hill, both when I was involved and I think today, is that through the good and bad times, this school has continued to advance. And its reputation in the community has continued to expand and become better known. I think just good boards and good heads keep a school rolling. And the education, it's the teachers really, the teachers and the students.
There have been changes and over the years we've added new buildings. All the buildings we've needed, they've been great new buildings and helped the school. But over the course of that long time, the school has stayed the same in a lot of ways too. I mean, it's still very much the same kind of school it was in 1974, where there were small classes and the teachers got to know the students well, and the kids got to know the teachers well, and we got to know the families well, and so it was it's always been a close-knit family kind of school. But I think that there's an enduring quality of Rocky Hill that is still here and is still great. And I hope you like it too.
When Alan decided to move on, the school went through a search, and at that time technology was really coming to the forefront of education, and Leith was one of our candidates, and his enthusiasm certainly for technology and for a country day school came through loud and clear. And Leith really can be credited as really spurring our school on to opening the doors of possibility to technology in the classroom. Leith was also very connected with the children. He would, I can remember him coming down and reading to the children in the lower school and being a familiar face, and having his children here in school as well. Then we had another transition.
I think it struggled a little bit with having confidence in its mission and feeling as if it was going to be okay to be a intentionally small country day school. And I think it was the right time for the school to have someone come back who said, this is who we are, and let's take pride in who we are, and let's stop trying to pretend we're someone else.
And it's wonderful, and that's Jim, that's the alum head that makes sure that the traditions, that the school, it's 75 years old, it's not that old, and yet we do have traditions. And you want to make sure they're here and they're going to continue. And I think rediscover who it was, because I think that was a big thing that Jim did, as coming in as an alum head of the school can do. Because I remember as a kid the sailing program and the summer camp, and it was great to see that all come back, and the emphasis on, we have this incredible location. We should be taking advantage of this location as an educational model, and I think that's part of what I think is really, I wanted to be part of making sure that people understand, and newcomers come in here and they see it right away. What a special place this is.
I can't give you a date when it started, but certainly at one point Jim Young had asked me, would I be interested in helping to revive the summer program? And so I did, and loved it. That's when we started the Summer Enrichment Academy, and that's the waterfront plays an enormous role in that. where we were able to introduce sailing and introduce kayaking activities and outdoor adventure activities, and to really showcase what we have here and to use it. For so much of the year, for a summertime, it wouldn't get use, and to have children down here from all over Rhode Island, not just Rocky Hill kids, to get the opportunity to see what we're all about and to take advantage of what's here.
This is the biggest thing, the waterfront. Right. So that is where Jim started, and he knew that is what makes us different. That we are on 100 waterfront acres. Playing fields. Jim was passionate about getting those playing fields down there, and he took sleepy land that was just wasted and made them into gorgeous playing fields. So there you have it.
The campus is amazing. It just takes your breath away, and just the buildings alone, it was kind of historical and small community feel, but it still felt really modern at the same time. And when I got into high school and we had Flynn, that was so cool. And it was really neat to have a balance between nature and technology and being modern while still appreciating the old and still having kind of a sense of history on the campus. So yeah, I was taken back when I saw the campus.
Interesting, even before we introduced what has now become known as the Rocky Hill model. It's that process of sharing, of communicating, of engagement and collaboration. Whether it is within the nurturing environment of the lower school, whether it is in the lovely, frenetic, unexpected sort of adolescent environment of the middle school, or whether it is within the more rigorous, challenging academic climate of the upper school. There's this process of engaging and, as I said, collaborating that again happens on a daily basis.
I was really fortunate to be able to be appointed head of the lower school back in 1990. The school at that time was small, much smaller than it is now, but there's some things that just haven't changed. I think that we have been able to take the parts that we know work best through experience and through research again, and weave them all into the program. So although we're built on a core of the philosophy of active learning, we know how to help children understand the magic of reading and steps that we need to take along with that. So I think that the philosophy is a blend of many different approaches to learning.
John Woo wrote to me, "Wouldn't it be great if we could meet each other sometime?" And I wrote back, I think we will. And then I wrote again and I said, wouldn't it be great to have our kids meet each other in a peace mission? Put together special meetings with teachers and our teachers and their teachers and our parents and their parents, and luncheons and dinners, and also arrange for each one of our pen pal families to have us over to their homes also. Yeah. We went to their homes, and the most exciting part was entering their schoolyard for the first time, and we walked in and their band was playing our national anthem, and as we walked through the courtyard with this band leading in front of us, 1,500 Chinese children stood up with going peace, 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 and that's all they would say is peace, peace, and we all lost it, We were in tears, and the kids, even our kids who didn't know the history with China, were still, amazed when they saw the amount of kids all over, all elementary kids.
We had a gentleman named Joe Laterra. Do you remember Joe
Yeah.
Laterra? Who he helped the entire school start looking at this campus beyond a beautiful location in ways that we could start incorporating the marine environment. And I think the middle school played a big role in that, because we took our environmental ed, which used to be a week at Alton Jones, and now we start our school year with our environmental, our Enviro Week, and it takes place at the waterfront.
And the other thing is, I think at that time there was a lot of conversation of whether or not we should keep the upper school. And to me it was very clear that in order for Rocky Hill to flourish and be the kind of school that we all know it is today, the paradigm had to shift. Rocky Hill had to move from being a younger school, a lower and middle school, to a school driven by a strong upper school program. And that's where a lot of the vision for Flynn came from, to say we can be successful, and what we need to do is to demonstrate that we're maturing as an institution.
Technology 15, 16 years ago was the cutting edge. And this is how we, got that springboard. It was...
Upper school was a game changer.
Yes. And part of the research was looking at other schools. And people who were on that search committee went to other schools.
We need to put the computers in the hands of the teachers and get the laptops in the hands of the teachers. And that model jumped us above every other school.
And he realized, and we were so new at this, he realized that a program like that would not work if the faculty didn't have an opportunity to educate themselves first. And so that's why we had the 2 rollouts of faculty computers. And we did a lot of training with the faculty.
Still to this day, the only school in the state that has the Harkness in all the classrooms. People know about Rocky Hill School now today for its technologically advanced program.
It was really interesting to sit in. I can't say I participated as much as sort of being in there in the meetings with the architects and the educators and designing a building for an educational model, as opposed to just building an upper school building. Not just classrooms, but looking at, okay, how are we going to interact with the students and the teachers? How do we want to teach?
We have taken a pedagogy introduced by a man, Edward Harkness. And we have taken the concept of the Harkness table and student-centered discussion, and we have made it our own. So we talk about the tables, but we talk also about the interior architecture of the building.
I mean, the campus is absolutely beautiful now, and moving into Flynn was a huge bonus to the school, and just teaching in there.
Yeah, what was that like, having upper school used to be Hale?
Yeah,
It wasn't just Hale. The upper school actually was in Hope Lindsay. It was
places.
Faculty House, it was the library.
It wasn't it just wasn't the same.
And we were very fragmented. I mean, the upper school was fragmented. There wasn't sort of that sense of being a community and having one place that sort of belonged to them. So I think that was pretty essential to.
And the classrooms were smaller and tighter, and
we were teaching English and science labs.
I do think Flynn radically changed the school for the better forever. And I wanted all along in our efforts to make sure we kept it a flagship. Everything we did was going to be purposeful and come back to the mission and come back to being the best, most dedicated and committed environment to educating young people. And really, it's a teaching and learning center, but it then allowed all of the other parts of campus to breathe easily. There wasn't the space crunch.
They had the Harkness tables in the science buildings too, so when I was in middle school and in 9th grade, we kind of got a taste for it, and then when we got to high school, experts by then, but I don't know, it was really, you don't really see that at any other school, just the desks, and it was more engaging, more intimate, and you get a better connection with your peers and the teacher. So, I don't know, that was really neat. It was different, but I think it suited the school really well.
That's another element of the Harkness table, actually, in that they learn incredible mutual respect for each other. They definitely learn to find their voices, but they learn to listen. And that, I think, in preparing them for life, that's one of the best gifts they could be given.
I think it's pretty cool because it puts everybody on the same level. You're able to understand that your opinion matters as much as the next person, and that I think is really important. I mean, I know I've become more confident as a student, as a contributor, since starting to use the Harkness tables, and I think that that's true for most students, especially the quiet ones, which I was a year or two ago. It's your connections with your peers, it's your connections with your faculty, how you interact, how you treat each other, how that really carries over into your life outside of that community. Rock Heels definitely helped me establish some relationships and friendships that I will have forever.
There's so many things that we have done, but I tend not to look backwards too much. I'm very proud of Flynn and what it represents, and I'm very proud of this community and the growth it's made. I'm thrilled by the curriculum in the upper school and the work that's gone into character development and core values, not just academic programs. I'm very proud of the athletic improvements and the offerings and the variety of offerings. But we still have wonderful opportunities and challenges ahead of us, and I think that's part of my mantra is that we need to continue to evolve as an institution and grow positively, and we're a hopeful place and we have great people, and so the future to me is always there's more to be done.
Certainly the use of our water, of our floating classroom, that'll change some things. I think the teachers are excited about that. I think they haven't really grasped the possibilities because we haven't been out on there enough yet, but that'll come. Once we get out on the water and they can, that's when the wheels will start turning about what you can do with kids out on the water. So that's an area that I'm really excited about.
We have always had a beautiful campus. Our campus, the nature within our campus really provides a gently changing landscape. But set against that landscape, we have, and what is wonderful, whenever I go on a walking tour with visitors, you have, the story plays out for you as you go from building to building, because the buildings speak to the different times and the evolution of the school. And if you move all around the campus and you eventually end up at the Flynn Academic Center, you can see that you're on the cusp of even greater evolution and greater technological advancement.
I would like to see it continuing to be a great school, continuing to reinforce its role in the educational group within Rhode Island as being a strong leader, offering a tremendous educational opportunity for people such as yourself who are going on to be successful in college, but successful people who leave knowing yourself. Would hope that it will be a strong, happy, and evolving institution that keeps coming back to its core mission to educating the whole person. Because I think that's really what Mr. Hale had in mind going into this.
On Narragansett's scalloped shores our school will stand forever, and loyal sons and daughters proudly will say, Rocky Hill, our alma mater, to thee will always be true. Rocky Hill, our fount of knowledge, hail the white and blue. We'll hold thy memories in our hearts, and though the years may flow, and friendships fade into the past, always we'll know. Rocky Hill, our alma mater, to thee will always be true.